Dare you venture into the abyss of the chilling Ice Cold Chronicles? In the shadows of an unforgiving narrator, this horror story channel unveils a frostbitten saga where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. Beneath the icy shroud, malevolent forces stir, and the air echoes with whispers of ancient dread. As you immerse yourself in chilling chronicles of execution and the supernatural, prepare for a descent into bone-chilling suspense. Each episode unravels the twisted strands of terror, weaving a narrative that leaves you shivering in the grip of the unknown. Brace yourselves for the haunting journey. Welcome to the realm of chilling Ice Cold Chronicles. Happy Saturday, everybody. It's your host, Austin, and I have a great story here for you today. I'm not sure if this is going to be a one-part series or a two-part series or a three-part series. It may just be a one single thing, but this is a pretty long story, so we'll see how long here we end up going, because it takes about 1 hour to read this entire story. So we'll see. Now, today's creepy chronicle story is The Girl in the Picture by Niall Capello. So this story is about a sketch artist and a grieving mother. They set out to solve a cold case. The more that they dug, the more terrifying the truth become. Let's go ahead and get rolling. This is starting part 1 of this story. There's 3 parts. But if we can fit all 3 in this video today, in this podcast episode, we will. Let's go ahead and get rolling here. For most residents of Holland, Michigan, there was nothing remarkable about March 11th, 1989. A Saturday. Oh, today's Saturday. Frost on the ladders of the city's water towers thawed in the sun. Spring was just over a week away. Mothers poured milk over cereal for kids watching back-to-back episodes of their favorite cartoons. Fathers who worked weekends drove pickup trucks to industrial jobs at local automotive and concrete companies. But all was not well in the house on the corner of Lincoln Road and 52nd Street. It belonged to Dennis and Brenda Bowman, a married couple with 2 children. For the Bowmans, March 11th marked the last time they saw their 14-year-old daughter, Andrea, alive. Dennis was the one who contacted the police. He told them that he'd come home from his job as a wood machinist to find Andrea missing, along with some of her belongings and $100 from his dresser. Dennis described Andrea, whom he and Brenda had adopted when she was an infant, as a troubled teenager who frequently fought with her mother and had run away to a friend's house once before. Dennis agreed to call around to the homes of kids Andrea knew to find out if anyone had seen her, but his wife soon took over as the family's point of contact. It was Brenda who called the police regularly, and Brenda who corrected the amount of cash missing from her husband's dresser to $150. That was enough for police to issue a warrant for Andrea's arrest for larceny. The warrant listed Dennis as the victim of his daughter's alleged crime. With no foul play suspected, the police labeled Andrea a runaway and passed her case along to the Youth Services Bureau. Few people who knew the Bowmans questioned the official narrative. Over the years, there had been whispers about the family. Once, when Andrea was in middle school, she boarded the school bus bleeding from her wrist. Some kids gossiped about a suicide attempt, but others said Andrea had cut herself trying to get back into her house after her parents locked her out. There were rumors that Dennis, a former Navy reservist with reddish-brown hair, a goatee, and wire-trimmed glasses, and Brenda, a portly woman with curled bangs who'd once worked at a jewelry counter at Meyer department store, abused Andrea. But back then, what happened behind closed doors was considered family business. 15 months before Andrea's disappeared, Brenda gave birth to a daughter, Vanessa. Andrea went from being an only child to more than a big sister. She was a third parent to the chubby, red-headed baby. While other kids her age went to after-school clubs and Friday night football games, Andrea stayed home changing diapers and cleaning bottles. She kept a photo of her sister in a school folder, where other teens might stash a magazine, cutout, or a Polaroid of their crush. When she wasn't with Vanessa, Andrea was anxious about the baby's well-being. Many people in Holland assumed that Andrea had gotten so fed up with her home life that she finally split. Maybe she'd gone looking for her birth mother. People heard that she'd hitched a ride at a local truck stop, had left town with an older boy, or was pregnant. Brenda reported a series of tips in the weeks and months following her daughter's disappearance, all of which seemed to confirm that Andrea had run away. At the end of March, Brenda claimed Andrea had been spotted at a 7-Eleven. In mid-April, Brenda said she received an anonymous call from someone claiming that police were looking for the teenager in the right area, but on the wrong street, whatever that meant. In June, she reported a sighting at a local property where Andrea had supposedly been hanging out with a group of young men. And in October, Brenda said a friend had seen Andrea pregnant and with dyed hair in a line at Meyer. Police investigated but found nothing. Andrea's classmates went to prom and graduated, then got jobs or headed to college. Eventually they married and had children of their own. But Andrea remained forever 14. A single photograph formed most people's memory of her. It was given to police when she first vanished. In it, Andrea is sitting against a blue studio backdrop and looking just off camera, with her green eyes cast hopefully upward and pieces of her dark, shaggy hair hanging over her forehead. Her smile is charmingly off-balanced. She looks suspended between adolescence and adulthood. Photos of missing children were often printed on the sides of milk cartons or on flyers, taped to the top of pizza delivery boxes. Andrea's picture wound up somewhere else. In 1993, the band Soul Asylum debuted a music video for its song Runaway Train, featuring the images and names of missing kids across America. The video was a huge hit, with several versions airing on MTV and VH1. In the one that played in Michigan, Andrea's photo appears just after the 2-minute mark. Reflecting on the video 20 years after its release, director Tony Kai claimed that more than 24 missing children were found because of the video. Andrea Bowman wasn't one of them. Carl Koppelman never expected to solve mysteries. He worked as an accountant until 2009, when his mother's health began to decline. At 46, Koppelman became a full-time caregiver, and his days, once filled with reviews of spreadsheets and financial statements, now revolved around driving to daughter's appointments and administering medications. When he wasn't tending to his mother, Koppelman was online exploring message boards, news sites, and social media. At the time, the story dominating headlines and bordering on popular obsession was the return of Jace Dugard. In 1991, Dugard had been kidnapped while walking to a bus stop near her home south of Lake Tahoe, California. The blonde, freckled 11-year-old was the subject of a nationwide search, but eventually the case went cold. Then, on August 26, 2009, Dugard reappeared, For 18 years, convicted sex offender Philip Garado and his wife Nancy had held her captive at their home in the town of Antioch, more than 150 miles from where they kidnapped her. Degard had given birth to two of Garado's daughters, who were now 11 and 15. To the embarrassment of local authorities, parole officers had visited the Garado's home several times during the years Dugard was missing. They had failed to check the backyard where the young woman was kept in a network of tents, lean-tos, and sheds. Kopelman's interest in the Dugard case led him to the Web Sleuths, a forum where crime hobbyists and armchair detectives connect and collaborate on unsolved cases. Kopelman gravitated to posts about cold cases, the ones least likely to ever be solved. Until recently, Dugard's had been one of them. How many more would benefit from fresh eyes and a little persistence? Kopelman spent countless hours scrolling through the national database of missing persons and unidentified bodies known as NAMUs. There's overlap between the two main parts of the database, the disappeared and the deceased. The trick is finding it. During late nights at his computer in a dimly lit corner of his mother's suburban home in El Segundo, California, Kopelman would try to match the characteristics of people who had gone missing with those of the unidentified dead. Finding a likeness could be enough to generate a tip for law enforcement. When Kopelman noticed the age and condition of some bodies might make it difficult for loved ones to recognize them, it sparked an idea. Kopelman liked to draw portraits for fun, and he was pretty good at it. He also had a CD-ROM of the image editing software CorelDRAW, which someone had given to him as a gift. One day, with his mother napping in the next room, Kopelman installed the program on his computer. It was his first step towards becoming a forensic sketch artist. He started creating lifelike renderings of Jane and John Does based on photos taken post-mortem. He used CorelDRAW to open eyes, fill in sunken cheeks, and give faces more dynamic expressions. In complicated cases where bodies had decomposed, he recreated facial structure. The goal was to make the dead more recognizable, to loved ones searching for them, and to police trying to identify them. Once he finished a rendering, Kopelman sent it to NAMUs, and the database would sometimes publish it. He also posted his work on Web Sleuths, so other armchair detectives could use it in their identification efforts. Eventually, Kopelman began working with police departments in the DNA Doe Project, which identifies human remains through genetic testing and genealogical research. Glad to help law enforcement generate leads and, in some instances, put a name to a face, Kopelman was almost always an unpaid volunteer. His renderings were instrumental in solving several cold cases, including the identification of the Caledonia Cali Jane Doe, also known as Tammy Jo Alexander, in 2015. But before all that, in 2009, when he was just starting out as an amateur sleuth, Kopelman got interested in the case of Racine County Jane Doe. When she was found near the edge of a Wisconsin cornfield in 1999, the young woman had only been dead about 12 hours, but rain had washed away any evidence that might have been useful to investigators. It seemed likely that the young woman had been murdered elsewhere and then just dumped. An autopsy determined that she may have been cognitively disabled and that she had suffered long-term abuse and neglect. She had broken bones and a cauliflower ear, and her body showed signs of sexual assault. More than 50 people from the farming community where she was found attended her funeral, but no one knew her name or what had happened to her. Her gravestone read "Gone, but not forgotten." Hope more than a description. Kopelman read everything he could find about the Racine County Jane Doe, combining through news articles and social media. He learned that she had hazel green eyes, 2 piercings in each ear, and short reddish brown hair. She was 5'8" and 120 pounds, and estimated to be between 18 and 30 years old. She was found wearing a men's gray and silver Western-style shirt embroidered with red flowers, a design the manufacturer told police from the mid-1980s. On NamUse, Koppelman plugged in some general search criteria, gender, age, location, and clicked the results for missing persons. With each one, Koppelman asked himself, could this be her? In most cases, the answer was a clear no. The age didn't match, or the location made no sense. But one entry gave Koppelman pause. Andrea Bowman. Andrea and the Racine County Jane Doe shared physical characteristics, and their ages aligned. Andrea would have been 25 in 1999, where the Jane Doe was killed. Holland, where Andrea disappeared, sits directly across Lake Michigan from where the Jane Doe was found. It's just 4 hours by car from one location to the other, tracing the lake's southern shoreline and passing through Chicago. To test the possible identification, Koppelman created a composite image superimposing Andrea's photo with ones from the Jane Doe autopsy. He marked the similarities in red. Koppelman took his theory to law enforcement, who found it compelling enough to investigate. To determine whether the Jane Doe was Andrea, police would need to compare DNA from the body with that of someone in Andrea's family. Because Andrea was adopted, authorities had to track down her real birth mother. Koppelman knew that could take a while, or that it might never happen, forcing investigators to find other avenues for identification. As the police did their part, Koppelman kept poking around online, learning what he could about Andrea. On the day, at the end of 2012, he came across a Classmates.com page for Andrea, the premium kind you have to pay for to keep active. In order to connect directly with former school acquaintances, was this Andrea alive and well and trying to find old friends? And if it wasn't her, then who was it? Kathy Turkanian's life story seemed ripped from the plot of a made-for-TV show. Her mother, Shirley, had 6 children. The family moved 7 times before she started the 7th grade. The stepfather was deployed for long stretches, and Turkanian's mother was overwhelmed by the demands of taking care of so many kids, including one who had epilepsy. With no one looking after her, Turkanian was molested at the age of 10 by the husband of one of her mother's friends, then raped at 12 by a teenager. She knew she had to escape her existence, so she started to make a plan. In 1972, Turkanian left Virginia, where her family was living at the time, with no clothes except what she was wearing and without saying goodbye. She was 14 and had no money. She hitchhiked to Tennessee, where she met up with a friend in Memphis, and then went to the city's Greyhound bus station. She didn't have a destination in mind, but noticed another traveler wearing colorful beads, who mentioned a party down in New Orleans called Mardi Gras. The next day, Turkanian arrived in a Big Easy where jazz music reverberated through the French Quarter and people laughed and sang jubilantly in the streets. In the midst of the counterculture movement of the 1970s, Turkanian wasn't the only runaway teen in New Orleans. She met a network of young people who helped each other out, offering a place to crash, a job, and tips and tricks for staying off the street. Through this group, she met Randy Badger, a 19-year-old who'd recently hitchhiked to Louisiana from Los Angeles. Before long, they found a place to stay and were doing everything together. They even got joint work at a circus sideshow. For the first time, Turkanian was living her life how she wanted to. In December 1972, Turkanian and Badger traveled to South Carolina, where it was legal for a minor to get married if they had parental permission. Turkanian's parents gave it gladly. In fact, they insisted on the union. Shirley didn't want to be the person police called if her daughter was in trouble. Turkanian's stepfather sent the paperwork that was necessary. The couple were married less than a year when Turkanian found out she was pregnant. It was unexpected news, but also another step toward independence. Turkanian wanted to do better by her baby than her mother had done by her. On June 23, 1974, Turkanian gave birth to a healthy daughter. She named her Alexis, after the actress Alexis Smith. Her relationship with Badger soon went downhill while Turkanian balanced work with caring for Alexis. Her husband seemed more interested in partying with friends, including other women. The final straw came when Alexis was 5 months old. Turkanian returned home from a shift to find Badger kissing another woman on the couch, while Alexis was alone in the back room crying without a diaper on. Turkanian decided to leave, but she had to think about Alexis too. What would be best for her daughter? Turkanian resigned herself to what she considered her only option. She went home to Virginia. During the 5-day Greyhound ride, Alexis barely cried. Passengers complimented Turkanian, welcome encouragement for the now single teen mom. But whatever confidence Turkanian felt vanished when she arrived in Norfolk and her mother picked her up at the station. Shirley didn't throw her arms around her daughter or plant kisses on Alexis's plump cheeks. Instead, she looked the pair up and down and puckered her face in judgment. It turned out that Shirley had been diagnosed with breast cancer and given just 5 years to live. Turkanian quickly realized that her mother expected her to care for her siblings, and while Shirley never said it outright, it was clear that she didn't think Turkanian should have a child of her own. One day, casually, Shirley said, "You ran out of formula. How are you going to take care of this kid?" A seed was planted, and from it Turkanian's doubt grew. She increasingly felt like she couldn't give Alexis the life her daughter deserved. Turkanian agreed to give her baby up for adoption. Shirley handled the logistics, assuring Turkanian that Alexis would be taken in by a good family through Catholic charities. Shortly after the adoption was finalized, Turkanian left home again. This time the teenager hoped things would be different. Turkanian eventually went to a nursing school and met her current husband. They never started a family of their own. For more than 30 years, she didn't have any idea what had become of her daughter, Turkanian. With blonde hair and a confident smile, sometimes wondered if Alexis looked like her. She hoped her daughter was happy, and that Alexis's adoptive parents knew how lucky they were. Then, in April 2010, a letter arrived at Turkanian's home in Massachusetts that upended her life. It was from a social worker, who explained that Alexis had disappeared from her adoptive home in Michigan in 1989. Police were investigating a new lead in the case that Alexis might be a Jane Doe found in Wisconsin, a dead girl. Police needed a sample of Turkanian's DNA to know for sure. Turkanian was perplexed by how little information the letter provided. It didn't include Alexis's adoptive name or the city where she'd lived, nor did it offer contact information for police or any details about Alexis's disappearance when she was 14, the same age Turkanian had been when she ran away from home. Turkanian was willing to share her DNA, but she wanted to know more about what had happened to her daughter. She searched online for information about missing girls in Michigan. It didn't take long to find one of the town of Holland whose birthday and physical description matched Alexis's. When she saw the girl's school photo, Turkanian thought Andrea Bowman could be her daughter. Eventually, Turkanian would learn that as a baby, Alexis had wound up in the hands of Virginia's Department of Social Services. Someone, possibly Shirley, had reported that Alexis was born with fetal alcohol syndrome, and that Turkanian had taken LSD during the pregnancy. Both lies. Turkanian insisted. The life she'd imagined Alexis would have crumbled in her mind. Desperate to know the truth, Turkanian set up a Facebook page about Andrea's disappearance, as well as a Classmates.com account in Andrea's name. She was hoping to connect with her daughter's old friends. Instead, she found Carl Kopelman. Turkanian and Kopelman began exchanging messages, which led to a series of long phone conversations. Turkanian also met other online sleuths interested in Andrea's case, including a woman in New Jersey named Sue Kovacs, who helped Turkanian revamp the Find Andrea Facebook page and expand its reach. Everyone waited for the results of Turkanian's DNA test to see if there was a match with the Racine County Jane Doe. But for the people invested in the case, determining whether Andrea's body had been found was just one piece of the puzzle. If Andrea was indeed dead, how had it happened? If she had been killed, who was responsible? Turkanian got in touch with a retired Michigan detective familiar with Andrea's case, a man named Pat O'Reilly. His frankness surprised her. They botched this case from the beginning, Turkanian remembered him saying. O'Reilly didn't respond to an interview request. According to O'Reilly, the person Turkanian needed to be looking at was Andrea's adoptive father, Dennis Bowman. So that is part 1 of this story. I am going to separate them because these will be taking a while to go through different parts, but this is part 1 of The Girl in the Picture, true crime story by Niall Capello. So stay tuned for episode number 2 of this story, which will be part 2. It'll be a different episode, but it'll be part 2 is what I meant to say, part 2. Stay tuned for part 2 of this story, The Girl in the Picture. With that being said, the way this story comes out, keep your kids close today. Keep them close and treat them right. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you back here for part 2 in the next few days.